Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of Business, Housing, and Zoning Committee for January 6, 2025. I am Jamal Osman, and I'm the chair of this committee. Before we begin the meeting, I want to remind all members, staff, and public that these meetings are broadcast live to enable greater public participation. They include real-time captioning to create the accessibility of our proceeding to the community. Therefore, all speakers need to be mindful of the rate of their speech so that our captioners can fully transcribe all comments for the broadcast. We ask all speakers to moderate the speed and the clarity of their comment. We'll be using a speaker management for this meeting, so please log in. At this time, I'll ask clerk to call the roll so we can verify a quorum.
Councilmember Rainville is absent. Cashman?
Present.
Jenkins?
Present.
Chowdhury?
Present.
Vice Chair Ellison?
Here.
And Chair Osman.
Present.
There are 5 members present.
Let the record reflect we have a quorum. Before we proceed to the public hearing on items on our agenda, we will first take our consent agenda, which is listed item 3 through 13. Now I'll recognize Councilman Rainville, who has joined us. Item 3 is approving 2 liquor license. Item 4 is approving 7 liquor license. Item 5 is a passage of ordinance correcting zoning code provision. Item 6 is approving amended guidelines for the Bridge Fund for Dance Program. Item 7 is authorizing extension and exclusive development rights to George Sherman or Sherman Associates. Item 8 is approving an amendment to the city comprehensive plan located at 1501 Johnson Street Northeast. Item 9 is approving amendment to the city comprehensive plan located at 3010 12th Avenue South. Item 10 is approving amendment to the city comprehensive plan and authorizing CBIT to present those Metropolitan Council. Item 11 is approving fixation of a public art at Phillips Gateway. Item 12 is setting a public hearing for our next meeting on May 20, 2025 to receive a public comment for the 2025 through 2029 Housing and Urban Development Action Plan. Item 13 is referring to staff subject matter of ordinance to modify definition of affordable housing units. With that, do any of my colleagues have any comments or questions? Council Member Cashman.
Thank you so much, Chair Osman. I just had a quick question about number 7, the exclusive development rights extension to Sherman Associates. I'm wondering if staff would be able to come up and just explain, the nature of extending exclusive development rights and when we first approved the development rights and what's the nature of the need for an extension.
Hello, Councilmember Cashman, through the Chair Osman and committee members. I'm Emily Stern with CPED Business Development, and have been working with Sherman Associates since we issued the request for proposals for this property in 2018. I believe we officially awarded development rights to Sherman initially in 2019, and we have extended those rights multiple times, due in part to, I should back up and say that the original request for proposals included some different development criteria that are no longer in effect. At the time, one of the core requirements was that the proposer, a developer, submit a proposal for a large-scale public market, and Sherman did that. He was the only, or that Sherman Associates was the only responsive developer to that RFP, and they did submit a proposal for that market, along with some housing and community space. Unfortunately, they were not able to get financing. They worked for a better part of a year to 2 years to try to get financing and an operator for that market, and they weren't able to get either. And so when we went back for an extension of development rights a couple of years ago, we allowed them to kind of pivot on their development plan to work more directly with the Park Board, the Minneapolis Park Board, which had already been working on a planning effort as part of the Curry Park redevelopment and expansion, and doing extensive outreach and engagement on that. And so the plan, or what the Park Board's hope, and this is remains to this day, is to expand the footprint of Curry Park, demolish including where the Coyle Center currently is, and then essentially build a new park facility on this particular site, which is adjacent to the Curry Park. So that kind of pivot of, development plans, extended the time frame needed for Sherman, again, as the master developer. And then the other big piece of the development plan, which was or is a large-scale multifamily housing project, affordable rental project. At the time, the zoning requirement for the site was a minimum 10 stories, and Sherman tried to comply with that requirement, and again, had a lot of difficulty getting financing for such a large-scale affordable housing development, including through our trust fund, just because of the size of the ask or the request for affordable housing funds from the city and or the state would be just larger than and would really not allow for the resources, for those program resources to be spread among other projects. And so there is, right now, our colleagues in planning are undergoing a citywide comp plan amendment process to basically allow more flexibility, not just on this site, but in other zoning districts in the city to allow more flexibility with respect to height. So Sherman's current housing proposal, which is now a 6-story building, and the park facility will be allowed, or would be allowed, under the new zoning classification for this site once the comp plan is amended, which is expected later this year. So that's a long way of saying that this project has taken some twists. There's been some twists and turns along the way, and the Sherman team has had to go back and kind of reformulate their project a couple of times. And so the project that they have now is a much more feasible project, both the housing component and the Park Board component, which already has some financing from the state legislature, and they're back at the state legislative session this current session to try to get the rest of the capital financing for that piece of it.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. I'm just a little concerned that the plan has changed so much, and that, we issued the development rights for that particular project 6 years ago now. Is it typical for us to extend with no, progress for so many years? This is a question, I guess, for the chair and vice chair and people who have been on biz longer, but that's what's on my mind about this. It doesn't sound like this plan is anywhere close to coming to fruition, because they still need to get a comp plan amendment. That takes a long time to get done. Would it be more appropriate to just reissue the RFP for development rights under a new set of circumstances that would be more feasible?
I'll recognize Director Eric Hansen.
Thank you, Chair Osman and Councilmember Cashman. Eric Hansen, the CPED Director. And I just want to talk about the general nature of our development process. The development of this property is going to be very complex. We knew that going in when we issued the RFP back. I think the original, I think we're off a couple of years. The original development rights were in 2021. But this is a complicated development site where it has taken the twists and turns that is not atypical for such a large site. And we see that we have made some significant progress at this site with the addition of the partners with the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, and some changes around some real barriers that we had to test in the marketplace. And now that we think we have those barriers identified, we're working towards solutions. This is the moment, this next 2 years is the moment where we think we can get the deal together. And then at the end of the 2 years, if the deal isn't together, then we would have we would go revert back to seeing if there's anybody else. There's not another development partner we see in the market right now that could be as far along as this development, with Sherman Associates in the lead and the Park Board together. And the Park Board has been able to raise money through the state for their facility. So we think it's the right thing to do, is to keep this thing moving forward for the next 2 years.
Thank you for that additional context. I think, yes, we can hold ourselves to that 2-year deadline. And just, from my perspective, I think it would be appropriate for us to go back to the drawing board if it's not working in 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Cashman. And I had a conversation with the staff on this item. This is located in my ward. And just a little bit, my colleagues, to the history behind this land. This is Lot A. Long time ago, community was promised a cultural mall, and that didn't happen. And Sherman Associates was the only developer that came forward. This is the third time we're extending, and I don't know what the limit is. I do have an issue on that, but I'm as the park board came forward and say that they're willing to partner and build space. It's much needed. The community. This is very dense neighborhood, and the space for youth to have activities is really wonderful. I have talked to Sherman Associates staff and others. I saw the plan. It looks great, but it's just the idea of continue to extend it is an issue. So hopefully we can put this the last one. We do it and make sure the work is being done. The housing is needed, but most importantly, the space for Park Board is much needed. So I'll leave that comments there, and I'll recognize Councilmember Jeremiah Ellison.
Yeah, I was just gonna to Councilmember Cashman's points, just respond a little bit and say, like, I've been a part of denying some extensions in my ward. I've certainly allowed some extensions in my wards on projects, and I don't think it's atypical. I think it's really case by case. That's the way that I've experienced these, right? And the question is it better to have an inactive parcel or an active parcel? And then the second question is, if you move forward with the plan that as is, hopefully it's another 2 years. But if we do submit another RFP, how many years is it then, right? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? An RFP can be, I know we talk a lot about, just among ourselves and in this institution about staff's capacity, about those kinds of things. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think putting together a brand new RFP is not something that staff would see as light work. And so that's, so that is sort of sending staff back to the drawing board as well, to resubmit an RFP and then take in those applications. And that's if there's even a queue of developers that are interested in this lot. There may very well not be. And so I think it's, it's a case by case. This is in Councilmember Osmond's ward, I believe, and Councilmember Osmond did have a briefing with staff. And I think some of this stuff is just classic local government sausage making, and and it ultimately isn't staff who are telling us what to do. We have full discretion about these decisions as well. So I think, I think some of these questions are good for us to have on the dais, so that the public kind of understands the process. I do think some of these conversations, as Councilmember Osmond had just a few days ago, are conversations that are better in like a more informal space where we've got time and where every question can, minute question can be exhausted, so that we really feel prepared to make a decision one way or another when we get on the dais. But just wanted to give that context. I think it's really case by case, and it's the sort of the over under on like, what do you believe is the fastest way to activate a parcel? I think today I'm comfortable with this extension and feeling like it's the fastest way to activate this site. And I think in 2 years, like, obviously that question will be back on the table. But, and then one thing I was gonna ask, which I'm not sure the answer to, but I know that we've seen a lot of, 2018 and 2019, we saw a lot of like, economic development, new build. It was all like very, not easy, nothing's ever easy, but we saw there was a lot of capacity for that. Was this sort of a victim of 2020, 2021, 2022? Like, was that part of the reason that this wasn't coming to fruition because of market conditions, or was that not really a factor? They just sort of needed to get the right package before they were ready to break ground?
I mean, that's a great question. I think the answer is some of both. I mean, the development rights did extend over the pandemic period, so credit markets and things were more challenging then. But I also, going back to the fact that the project itself, as conceived, changed and went through a few different kind of formulations in terms of the uses changed, and also just the size and scale in terms of the housing. And so the financing, and ultimately, the financing is what makes a project go forward.
For sure.
And so that was challenged both by the market conditions, but also by the project itself changing in kind of size, shape, and form over those years.
For sure. And I asked that and for that clarification, just to let my colleagues know, like, not every 4 or 5 years are created equal, right? A project that looks like it's, oh, this is taking forever, it may have hit 2 years where nothing was going to happen, right? Regardless of what the project had going on. And then obviously there's those conditions where it's just like, this is dragging on, and we need to move on and let somebody else take a shot at it. But just, that's the final point and that I wanted to make. Thank you.
Councilmember Chowdhury.
Thank you, Chair Osmond. I was going to speak to a different item. I was going to speak to item number 7, which is an amendment, approving an amendment to the city's comprehensive plan. I just wanted to uplift this because there was discussion in the Planning Commission that I was a part of that was approved, and it's a request to take these parcels alongside Lake Street from the designation of Interior 3 or urban neighborhood to corridor mixed use and bring it up to corridor 6. Item number 9? I think so. Sorry, my bad. Thank you for the correction.
That's all good.
But I just wanted to highlight this because the applicant is bringing forward this request for a potential project in a set of lots. One, I believe, is vacant, and just bring some much-needed activation into this area, some much-needed housing into this area. And after we approve, this will actually be something that our CPED department sends over to the Met Council for greater approval. But I just wanted to highlight this because in a moment in time where we're trying to figure out how we're going to address this housing crisis, we were able to take a look at our comprehensive plan and work with this applicant, come before iterative body like the Planning Commission and say that, yes, this type of rezoning makes sense, especially on a corridor that goes onto the blue line and the green line connections. And so just wanted to highlight that, didn't want it to let pass through consent because I think it's a big deal, and there's also been quite a lot of public comment from community members on this item that committee members might have seen.
All right, seeing no other comments, I will approve all consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed say nay. The ayes have it and the motion carries. Now we will be proceeding to the public hearing portion of our agenda. Item 1 is a public hearing for land sale for 2 parcels located at Continental Palace at 9th and 10th Street South. I will welcome Emily Stern from CPED to give that presentation. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Osmond, committee members. Emily Stern with CPED Business Development. Before you today to request authorization for the sale of 2 parcels located along Centennial Place at 9th Street South and 10th Street South to Hennepin County at a total sale price of $15,500. Hennepin County Facility Services is assembling property, including these 2 parcels, for the south parking ramp replacement as part of their overall expansion plan for the Hennepin Healthcare Hospital campus expansion downtown. Last month, following action by the Minneapolis Planning Commission, Council approved the vacation of a section of Centennial Place between 9th and 10th Street South, subject to retaining easements for water, sewer, and traffic facility purposes. This land sale will be subject to those same easements, with authorization for Public Works to release those easements once utilities are relocated. Sale prices for both parcels were established through a fair market valuation process by an independent third-party appraiser. Thank you all for your consideration. I'll stand for any questions, and I also wanted to mention that Hennepin County staff are in the room today and can answer any questions if you have specific questions about their Hennepin Healthcare's expansion plans.
Thank you so much for that presentation. And right now I'm going to proceed to open the public hearing and see if there's anyone who would like to speak on this item. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and I will make the motion to approve this item. This is located in my district and I have the time to go visit and really see the expansion and the plan for Hennepin Healthcare. It's amazing what it will look like. They have been doing a great engagement with the community, so this is a wonderful project that's coming forward. So with that, all those in favor say aye. Aye. And those opposed say nay. The ayes have it and the motion carries. All right, now we will move to our quasi-judicial item. First is a license ratification for Breeder Loco for unpaid taxes of state of Minnesota. I will ask City Attorney if you have any updates on that.
Yes, thank you, Chair Osman. This item is on the agenda due to the state of Minnesota's required process for license revocation due to non-payment of taxes. Since the item was placed on the agenda, the city has received the clearance certificate from the state of Minnesota indicating that those taxes have been paid.
Wonderful. All right, since we received that clearance letter, I will move to delete this item from the agenda. All those on the motion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. And those opposed say nay. The ayes have it and the motion carries. Okay, additionally, I will move to delete this from the agenda of the City Council meeting on May 15. Now we have final item for that. All right, item 14 is a discussion item. It's the last item we will take. We will be considering a resolution that approves the Glendale Townhomes as a local historical designation. I'll ask Rob Biskalecki, am I saying? Yep, from CBET to give us that presentation. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Chair Osman, and good afternoon, council members. My name is Rob Skalecki. I'm a senior city planner in the Historic Preservation section of the Planning Division in CPED. Today I'm presenting a discussion item to consider a resolution approving the local historic designation for the Glendale Townhouses Historic District. Glendale Townhouses, as commonly known today, Glendale Townhomes, as commonly known today, is a multifamily housing complex consisted of 28 buildings on 13 acres of land in the Prospect Park neighborhood. The Minneapolis Housing and Redevelopment Authority, which later became the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority, hired the local architectural firm of Larson & McLaren to design the complex, while landscape architect Hugh Vincent Feehan designed the landscape plan. Constructed at the edge of the Prospect Park neighborhood, the project known as Glendale Townhouses was designed to follow the character of Prospect Park, with curvilinear streets, sidewalks, grass boulevards, all while the properties were designed with large lawns, green spaces, and playgrounds between the buildings. Rectangular in plan, with a front portico, the exteriors retain their original brick veneer cladding on the first floor, but composite siding on the second floor has replaced the original cement asbestos siding. The buildings originally had flat roofs with flat roof porticos, but those were replaced with hip roofs and gable roofs over the porticos in 1972 and 1989, respectively. Other alterations have been made throughout the years, and due to these alterations, staff ultimately recommended denial of the Historic District nomination and designation, considering the loss of what is considered historic integrity, or the ability for the properties to portray their significance. In 2024, Councilmember Robin Wansley nominated the potential Glendale Townhouses Historic District for consideration as a local historic district. The nomination was heard at the June 4th, 2024 HPC meeting. Staff recommended denial of the nomination based on evidence from the Glendale Townhouses Historic District designation study that was compiled in 2019, which concluded the properties did not appear eligible for local historic district designation due to a loss of historic integrity. Notwithstanding staff recommendations, the HPC approved the nomination, established interim protection, and directed the planning director to prepare the designation study for the Glendale Townhouses Historic District. Interim protection for the historic district expires on June 4th, 2025. The designation was heard at the April 8th, 2025 HPC meeting, and due to time constraints because of caucus night, the HPC had to vote to continue the item to the April 22nd, 2025 meeting, because a lot of members of the public did show up to comment at that April 8th meeting. Notwithstanding staff recommendation, the Heritage Preservation Commission voted on April 22nd to recommend that the City Council approve the local designation of the Glendale Townhouses Historic District because the district complied with local designation criteria number 1 for social history and number 5 for landscape design. The Heritage Preservation Commission's rationale included the following findings. 1, it is the first affordable housing project in Minneapolis, and thus its social and community planning is qualified as landmarkable. 2, it retains the landscape and volumetric integrity that was initially created when the buildings were built and sited. 3, the buildings still contain their historic integrity, although the HPC recognizes that they have been changed over time. The Heritage Preservation Commission proposed setting a period of significance from 1952, which was the date of their construction, to 1972, the date of the first major alterations to the building. So there was a clear demarcation from the first time the buildings were modified, also with knowledge that this could be extended at a later date. At the public hearing, the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority, who are the property owner, strongly opposed the designation of the historic district. Councilmember Robin Wansley and the Prospect Park Association have voiced their support for the district designation. The community group known as Defend Glendale is in support of the district's designation. Staff received around 100 written public comments, with the majority in support of the designation, but some of those against the designation, and these public comments were included in the designation study attachments. With that, I'm available as staff for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I just want to remind members that this is quasi, I know it says discussion, but it's also quasi-judicial. Is that correct? We're looking at the facts. And
Chair Osmond,
Yep.
this is a quasi-judicial hearing. However, the public hearing has already been held at the Historic Preservation Committee, so you're not obligated to hold another public hearing. You may proceed directly to your review and deliberation of the facts for this item.
Sure. Thank you so much. Yeah, I was just highlighting that we're looking at the facts in front of us as a quasi-judicial. My first question is that, can you put it up, or do you have the finding of the heritage preservation? Is it on your slides? Where do we?
Chair Osmond, unfortunately, I did not put those on the slides. The slides are actually the same slides that the Heritage Preservation Commission saw at their public hearing. I would be happy to read those again if that would be helpful.
Okay.
So the first finding is that it is the first affordable housing project in Minneapolis, and thus its social and community planning qualified as landmarkable. The second is that it retains the landscape and volumetric integrity that was initially created when the buildings were built and sited. And the third is that the buildings still convey their historic integrity, although the HPC recognizes that they have been changed over time.
All right, thank you so much. I remember about 5 years ago, this item came forward. And similarly, the Heritage Preservation also recommended that this does qualify for historical designation site, and now it's front of us. So I want to open to my colleagues if they have any questions or comments on this item. Councilmember Jeremiah Wilson.
Yeah, I'll give just my history in dealing with this. You know, I'll stay pretty high level unless my colleagues have specific questions. But you know, from my vantage point, I've now seen 2 different representatives over a span of time both advocate for this. I've seen community members since before my time in office and since I've been in office continue to advocate for this. I think that I was back when this first came up before the committee. I think I was open to the argument that this land was going to be developed in some way. It's been it's been a while, and it just hasn't occurred. Development hasn't occurred. I don't know fully what the Public Housing Authority thinks their timeline is, but I'm inclined to support this. We have two sets of facts. We have facts that both could support approval of this, and we have facts that could support denial. And so, from that vantage point, I feel like we're kind of covered in terms of legal basis. That's my analysis. But given that, I think that I'm probably going to be voting in favor of granting this historic designation, and so I'm happy to answer any questions from my colleagues about why, or obviously we've got our experts in front of us to talk about that, and yeah, so just want to let folks know. Otherwise, is there a motion before us? I'm happy to make the motion to grant the historic designation. So.
Councilmember Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair Osman, and I too have been engaged in this conversation since about 2018, and initially I was hearing from Defend Glendale that they were deeply concerned that MPHA was trying to drive them out of their homes, that the plans that were being put forth would create significant hardships for the residents, that would displace residents, et cetera, et cetera. And, this item that was brought forth by former Councilmember Cam Gordon sat on this agenda, this biz committee's agenda, for over a year and was continuously passed on until subsequently it was finally removed from the agenda permanently. I just feel like I don't see how this historic designation will help those residents. It will create significant hardships to restore the properties, to rehab the properties, to do any additions to the properties. It literally, I'm confused. It boggles my mind that Defend Glendale would be advocating for this action when their entire reason for creating the group Defend Glendale was to protect the residents that live there. That is their mission of that organization. And this would subsequently go completely against that mission statement. So I'm having a really hard time considering supporting historic designation for the Glendale townhomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Jenkins. I will recognize Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you. I am going to vote to deny this designation. I stand with our staff recommendation. And to the experts at the Housing Authority, they have convinced me that this is going to drive up the price of any rehabilitation. And clearly, the way the roofs have been altered and the siding is not close to the historic buildings that were built there. So I do not want to hurt the residents with these higher costs. It'll only just exacerbate the current problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Rainville. With myself in queue, I just want to really kind of drive and say that, I was part of this process 4.5 years ago when former Councilmember Cam Gordon brought it up. I did not support this item at that time. Now that I was able to watch the public hearing, many resident, low-income immigrant community came forward to speak. I visited the location. It has that unique, not any other properties around that area is like that. It's a bigger space for for the community. When I was walking there, I saw many children playing around. Each family, I believe, has some kind of a backyard, more spacious way of community to play and burn energy. They have elementary school there. They have park there. There's a lot of great things around those neighbors that they have been enjoying for a long time. And as mentioned, this was built in 1952, I believe, and it was altered maybe around 79, 80s. But the core of it still looks that old, space around that Prosper Park area. As we see University Avenue, there's more high-rise building, there's more density. I know as a city we're pushing density. Someone who represents the biggest density ward in our city is me. As we can imagine, see the Riverside is close to 10,000 people that live there in that area. But as I talk to the residents and as I listen to the public hearing, as also the second time that Heritage Preservation had recommended that this does qualify and find those findings, I will agree and also support Councilmember Allison's motion to approve for historical preservation on this item. I saw the residents that continue to fight and really say, this is our land, this is place we grew up. I met some of students that were born there, now they're in college, 19, 20 years old, that I had a conversation with them. This is what they have got used to it. I understand the MPHA plan to really create more housing. They have a large waiting list of folks that are waiting to get in there. But at the same time, what was not clear to me, I know this is not part of the fact, but what was not clear to me was that where is the funding coming from? It's going to be millions and millions of dollars, the cost of this. Where is that coming from? I attended a presentation MPHA has held with the residents. I saw the drawing and a couple different options of development. But I question a lot when definitely MPHA is struggling to keep up the housing they have and making sure the fire sprinkler and other things that and upkeeping the older properties they have. And one thing that I have heard, and I know this is not a place that we can ask questions, and maybe I'll ask you a question, is that many of the residents I talked to say that MPHA told them that if this was built, I'm sorry, if this is designated as historical designation, they would not be able to get basic maintenance, meaning fixing doors, interior fixing. So I want to make sure that we get clarification of what the residents are hearing and what is the ideal, what would that look like if we designate this as a historical designation? Does that mean the doorknobs will not be fixed?
Chair Osman, thank you for the question. The city has 20 locally designated historic districts, some of them going back 50 years. We review projects as they come in for permits, but the idea that maintenance would not be able to be carried out is not accurate. We review projects for that come in through permits. We've reviewed them through federal preservation standards, local historic district design guidelines that are adopted for most of our historic districts, which would be the next step if this would go forward for designation. So we review projects, but they're not things that, designation puts a hold on for maintenance.
Does designation includes interior work like cabinets, kitchen appliance, and fixing basic things? Would that be affected?
Chair Osman, not with this designation. That would require an interior designation, which is very
Okay.
rare at the city. So this is just exterior
Okay.
alterations that are being reviewed if this would go forward.
Okay, I think it's very good to be clear that residents will not be affected. They will be able to get maintenance fixed. They will be able to get the basic things done while they remain a place they have continued to advocate and spoke about, that they want to remain this place and they don't want high-rise place, and also the idea of relocation also came up a lot too. Okay, I'll give my colleagues opportunity to speak. Councilmember Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair Osmond. I guess I just wanted to ask, is this the first townhome project in Minneapolis?
Chair Osmond, Councilmember Jenkins, this is the original, what became MPHA, the original project that was completed as townhomes in 1952.
I'm not sure, but, so it was the first then, is what
Yes.
you're saying? Because I seem to recall the townhomes along Olson Highway. I mean, we completely tore those down. I thought those were the first ones in the city, but, you know, if you're saying these are the first, I guess I take your word for it. I'm sure that improvements can be made interior, but would they be more costly because of this historic designation?
Chair Osmond, Councilmember Jenkins, I can't speak to that exactly. It's more so
When you review other projects that come forward for renovation, improvements, et cetera, does the historic designation increase the cost of those improvements?
Councilmember Jenkins, not to my knowledge. When we review projects, I mentioned earlier, we do it through the Federal Secretary of the Interior standards, which are, there are 10 very open points that projects throughout the country adhere to when evaluating alterations to historic properties. What they essentially advocate for are seeing if something can be retained as is. If it can't be retained as is, can it be repaired? If it can't be repaired, can it be replaced in kind? So it really depends on the level of deterioration that is seeing for different items. That's part of the review process that would come forward for, you know, any property that's designated as a historic district. That's what staff would be evaluating, what the Heritage Preservation Commission would be evaluating.
Yeah, I mean, I do have a historic district in Ward 8, and those properties are extremely expensive to maintain, to repair, to rehab, et cetera, et cetera. You know, I guess I just want to express I am so deeply concerned about the federal government and HUD. I mean, they already fund these properties, these communities, you know, throughout its 50-year plus history. And with this current administration, I mean, the talk is to really almost eliminate HUD at the federal level. And I think that would just put these properties in more jeopardy, and put some of the most affordable housing that we have in the city in jeopardy of maintaining that affordability. So you know, those are my thoughts and my opinions, and I hope we consider that as we make these decisions. Thank you.
I'll recognize Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Chair Osmond. I was just, reviewing the reports on this, and I do see that that the staff findings have said the district has lost historic integrity of design, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association. No new information or different evidence has been presented that would allow CPED to recommend approval of the historic district in opposition to the study findings. So my read of the facts is that in denial of historic designation. However, I do want to ask the question that I'm most concerned about here, which is the potential displacement of residents in the process of renovations, because I think that's probably very concerning to all the people who are currently living there and council members representing the area as well. I'm wondering if staff could speak to what's anticipated, either with the historic designation or without it, in terms of, the community that's been living there.
Thank you, Chair Osman, Councilmember Cashman. As far as the community claims and about displacement, that's not something that we're able to evaluate through a designation. We're only looking at the existing conditions of the buildings, the significance of the property as is. So, any future plans at the sites, it's not something that we're taking into account through evaluating a designation of a district.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I think that, my read of the facts stands, but I just want to communicate to the chair and the vice chair that that's a concern for me as this project continues to move forward, and I hope that we can continue to have conversations outside of this quasi-judicial matter, this resolution regarding the future of the community who lives there now.
Just a quick clarification in response to Councilmember Jenkins. Sumner Townhomes was the first public housing, not Glendale.
Do you want to? Sure.
Do you want to
Chair
add?
Osman, just a clarification here regarding Councilmember Jenkins' point earlier. Sumner Townhomes was the first townhomes that were built. Staff's response was, these are the ones that we're evaluating here. These are the remaining townhomes that are the earliest here. So there's clarification there to that point that was addressed earlier.
Thank you. Councilmember Ellison.
Thank you. Just want to say we've got two sets of facts, both from folks who I would deem experts. Our staff, I think, are experts and know how to evaluate these kinds of situations. I would also say that the HPC also is our experts and know how to evaluate these types of situations. And so we have facts that are kind of in my mind, we have facts that are in dispute. And so I do think that we've got a strong case to make either decision. To my mind, while it's a little bit outside of the scope to talk about, future plans and those kinds of things, those things have come up. And so I think it's kind of fair to say that when the housing market was in a healthy place and we saw a lot of construction happening, there was ample opportunity for this to be a part of that. And it wasn't a part of that. The development didn't happen. The transition didn't happen. We saw other MPHA housing renovations occur, and so we know MPHA is totally capable of it. And so to my mind, we're kind of in this because we have sets of facts that will support either decision. That's my read of the situation, and because we have. I'm sort of looking at all the context around this and asking myself, at what point are we projecting a little bit too much into the future, questions that we don't know the answer to, the cost, future cost, we're not talking about the current deferred maintenance, why that deferred maintenance exists. Certainly, community members have their narrative, right? We have and so does MPHA. To me, it's a question of, are we going to be paternalistic about what we tell the neighbors is good for them, or are we going to both look at two sets of facts that come to different conclusions, also listen to what we're hearing from residents who live in the townhomes. I'm a little less concerned with residents who don't live there, who don't live in the townhomes, but are we going to listen to them? And this advocacy here goes back as far as probably longer than 2015, but I know that I wasn't in office in 2015, and even I was a part of some of these conversations around Defend Glendale and the Glendale townhomes. And so I think that after a while, you've got to ask yourself, if there was no merit to this historic preservation, then why hasn't renovation occurred already? If there was no merit to historic renovation, why have the neighbors remained adamant in their advocacy for over a decade? And if there's no merit to historic preservation, then why have two separate council members who at one point ran against each other? So it's not like they were in lockstep in agreement on everything. Why did two council members both assert that this is something that they think should exist in their wards? And I think that looking at all of the context, the decision that makes the most sense to me is to grant this historic designation and allow this to move forward. So I just wanted to give that context. I don't want it to seem like, there's no findings of fact to grant this. There are findings of fact to deny it, but there are also findings of fact to grant this, and I just, wanted to make that clear.
Thank you. Councilmember Chowdhury.
Thank you, Chair Osman. I did have a question, just in understanding the process where there are certain designations for historic preservation. I know that there have been different repairs that property owners have wanted to do that have differed from what was recommended under historic preservation, and they went before, I believe, the HPC to ask for just a granting of them moving forward in a different direction. And then that has been either approved or denied, and if denied, it comes before this committee. If the property owner and PHA were to decide to redevelop and come up with a different plan for this area, what would be the process for them should there be historic designation in this area?
Thank you, Chair Osman, Councilmember Chowdhury. The process, I think, as you detailed, is, there is a process. So it would go in front of the Heritage Preservation Commission if major alterations are being proposed, and then the commission would make a decision on whatever application has been submitted. Mm-hmm. From that point, if the property owner disagrees with that, you're correct, they have a right to appeal, and that would come here in front of BIS. As far as, going forward and whatever the property owner would want to do in the future, that would just have to adhere to the process. So, I'm not certain what the property owner is planning for future changes, but it's not something where, staff just says, no, you can't do that. There's a process that's built into it, and it goes in front of the Heritage Preservation Commission for their decision, and ultimately, if not agreed upon by the applicant, they have the ability to appeal that.
And just to further my understanding of that process, what if this property owner wanted to rezone the area? Would that still go through the same process, or would that have to be an intersection between HPC and Board of Adjustment?
So rezoning, isn't something that would go in front of the Heritage Preservation Commission. The HPC may adopt design guidelines in that situation. Whatever plans the property owner has would have to adhere to those design guidelines, whatever the zoning may be. But again, there is the process built in for the Heritage Preservation Commission and, if need be through appeal, BIS and council to be able to make decisions on applications.
Right, okay. So it would go through HPC or other bodies depending on what the applicant or property owner is requesting, and then if the property owner is not in agreement, they would come back to Business, Housing, and Zoning, and then full council, and then the decision would land here. And I think I'm making this point because these are a set of facts that we can look into for the future, right? These are processes that we do have in place. And considering what's before us, which is, does this qualify for historic designation? I'm really attached to criterion 1, which I feel like was laid out well by the HPC, right? This property is associated with significant events or with periods that exemplify broad patterns of cultural, political, economic, or social history. And this is also cultural, political history that is currently occurring, right? We've heard from council members who have been here much longer than me about this history from the past decade and even before. It makes me think about the designation of Milwaukee Avenue, right? A true working class history of housing that was built for immigrants that came here, that were artisans who made shoes, that worked in the rail yards, and if neighbors did not come together and fight for that preservation of that housing after it was dilapidated after some time, we would not have Milwaukee Avenue, right? There were multiple fights. You can go right over to Milwaukee Avenue and read that plaque and learn about it. And now it's held up as this place that you have to check out in the city of Minneapolis. And there are very few places that are, this is working class history. I could probably think of just two off the top of my head. It's Milwaukee Avenue, and then it's in the North Loop where you look at the bricks that we decided to keep, and we think about the Teamsters strike and the hard-fought battle that our workers had, that their blood that was spilled there. And so when I hear from the community and I read the public comment and I listen to the testimony from the HPC, it's not about, okay, this is going to guarantee all of this maintenance and all of these changes, right? Because they've been asking for that for a while, and that hasn't happened with or without maintenance. And I hope it happens in the future, right? It seems like there's a path. It's about recognizing and caring for a set of working class people across ethnicities, nationalities, and stories, right? And that, I think, is worthwhile for historic preservation, and that's why I think there was a 7-1 vote at HPC. Like, it wasn't even close. And should MPHA want to redevelop this area, want to make it bigger and better, and really do the work of what they want to share, which is help defend Glendale residents define their future, there's a process in place for that. Yeah, it's a couple of steps, but maybe it actually would be more iterative and inclusive of the community, and should they not like what comes from the HPC, we would be right here, where it would come before a body of council, where I hope this council continues to be one where we're talking about increasing housing opportunities, safety, health, livability, especially for working class peoples, where I feel like there would be a pretty good shot at things like that moving forward. We just had an item about rezoning that went through the Planning Commission, now came to Business, Housing, and Zoning, now is going to go to full council, and then we have to take it all the way up to the Met Council before we can have a larger housing project in a transit corridor, right? There are steps, and it's not impossible, and it's iterative, and community is putting their hands on it, and in this moment, where I think we're setting up for a process, should there be redevelopment, should there be improvements, it would just require more of community weighing in, which I think is the exact mission that MPHA is communicating, community members in Glendale, and community members up here. So for those reasons, I will be supporting the approval of designation.
Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you. So there's been a lot of questions raised here, and I see that we have Executive Director Warsami here. Perhaps you could speak to clarify some of these issues for us?
I think that's out of
If I
order.
can turn my,
I think that would be out of order. Unless we want to suspend the vote to suspend the rules and allow for community to speak as well, I think that'd be out of order.
Yep, and just want to also mention that applicant actually is not here, so. With that, is there any more you want to add, Councilmember Rainville?
thank you for telling me what the truth is.
Thank you. All right.
The rules?
No, you say truth. Okay, just my last comment here before I give it to Councilmember Allison is that I think Councilmember Allison put it very well that we have two arguments here. We have both finding from the staff, which is legitimate, and also we have finding from the heritage preservation, not just one, but two times, that which is also a fact and also legitimate. And considering that, I'm actually more concerned and people that it will affect. We have residents here who not just come here, but came back to the city hall. The demographics and the residents that live there, majority of them are immigrants, East African immigrants. And as I continue to talk to them, have a conversation with them, they are afraid of those changes. They want to be able to keep what they have and into the unknown of the MPHA, their plan on that. And I think it's, for me, I'm looking at that fact also. And while residents are here and have come and spoke, I know they don't have an opportunity here to speak, but they're the one who have been advocating and that continue to talk about how they want this preservation. And let me just say this, someone who grew up in project-based housing, it's similar to than what I grew up in East St. Paul, where you have like early 90s type of housing where there's more spacious, kids playing, family outside, allowing your kids to go across the, block from that area, and it's that uniqueness it brings. As I look at the other other public housing in our city, most of these high-rise buildings, and most people could be isolated, and there's some challenges of being in very dense, high-rise, 24, 30 story buildings. There's that challenge it is, but also we have this uniqueness. I think it kind of makes sense for us to keep at least a small portion of MPHA public housing for this kind of setting. And I would ask Councilmember Allison if he's maybe considered able to change his motion and forward this without recommendations, so we're able to get more other council members can have their input on this.
Absolutely. It looks like my original motion wouldn't prevail out of council today, and I would like to dispense with this item. I will first say to Councilmember Rainville, you're welcome to hop back in queue. I wasn't saying that your desire to have MPHA speak was out of order. I was just saying to simply have them come up without suspending the rules, which we hadn't voted on, would be out of order. But you can make that motion to suspend the rules. I wouldn't support it, but the body might, the committee might think differently. So just wanted to make that clear that you do have recourse here. The other thing is that I will withdraw my motion to approve, not because I don't support the designation, but because I don't think that motion would prevail out of council today. And again, I would like to dispense with this item and get it before full council. So I'm going to take my motion down, and I'm going to approve. I'm going to make the motion to move without recommendation.
All right. City Attorney, do you want to add anything?
No, Chair Osmond, I was just going to offer some suggestions on how to word that motion, but since it's been withdrawn, that can wait for council.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Seeing no other further discussion, this item has been moved without recommendation. I'll ask clerk to call the roll on that.
Councilmember Rainville.
Aye.
Cashman.
Aye.
Jenkins.
Nay.
Chowdhury.
Aye.
Vice Chair Ellison.
Aye.
Chair Osmond.
Aye.
There are 5 ayes and 1 nay.
All right, that motion carries. With that, thank you so much for residents of Glendale for coming through, for MPHA, for staff, for all the members. Seeing no further business before us. With no objection, I'll declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you.